as the slide says here, welcome to Elkin Island. We like to call it Elkin Island because Kim and I always talk about this, is that what we do at our office is very, very different. I'm sure many of you would agree. It's very different than a lot of other places. And really our goal is to empower everybody that comes in to really make good decisions about your health and your lifestyle. So we want to obviously care for you in the office and get your spine and nervous system working fantastic, but we want you to go home and make really strong, good decisions for yourself and your family so that you can have just abundance of health. Stay out of the medical system, stay out of the hospitals, unless of course you go break your arm, then don't come see us. We can't help you. But you know what I mean, right? So we want to obviously keep you well. So that's the whole goal. So what we do is very unique and very different. So tonight we're going to talk about a lot of stuff that, again, is very unique, very different. It's very different than the nutritional stuff you're going to get from the hospital. So for instance, if anybody's gone to see the dietetic nutrition at the hospital, or the nutritionist at the hospital, somebody who coaches people after diabetes or heart attacks and stuff like that, they go by Canada's food guide, which is very different than what we teach. However, it is changing. They're starting to make some changes to it, which is good. So they're finally coming up with the times. So what we teach is very, very modern. It's all evidence-based. So it's all about the cutting edge of nutritional trends. Okay? So the stuff you're going to get here tonight is really very forward-thinking. Okay? So some of you, it might be very new for tonight, but I think if you embrace it with an open mind, you'll really have some good success. We've seen such amazing results with it. How many people are in the 30-day challenge? Oh wow, the majority of you. That's fantastic. So those of you who aren't, there's still time to get in, and you're going to learn tonight, it's really worthwhile. Is everybody here like a member of the office? People come into the office? Is there anybody that's not a person that comes into the office? You're all just one person. Okay, well, welcome. I'm glad you're here tonight. So hopefully this is going to be very eye-opening for you tonight, and we welcome you to come into the office anytime. We're going to talk about that tonight, but yeah, so hopefully you really get empowered tonight, but this 30-day challenge is really going to give you lots of opportunity to really hone in and get very specific with your nutrition too. So it's a great opportunity. Okay. One thing, when we talk about nutrition, we really like to express that, going on diets is very short-term, right? Everybody's been on a diet. I'm sure you all know people that have been on a diet. Usually they're very short-term thinking. It's all about losing weight. But building a nutritional plan is something that we need to be sustainable. It's a lifestyle change, okay? However, losing weight is very important. We really want to talk about that because so many diseases, life-threatening diseases, are connected to being overweight. So it's very important that we really watch our weight and watch our obesity. So you look at obesity here, the slide that we have up here, negative effects of obesity, it really does lower your life expectancy. And I always use this example is that you may all have friends that are over the age of 80, but not many of them are obese. Because if you're obese, you don't make it to 80, right? Or if you make it to 80, your health is so bad, you don't have very good function, okay? So that's really something we got to pay attention to. So especially as, if you're over the age of 35 or 40, it's that much more important that you're paying really close attention to your nutrition because you can't eat the way that you used to when you were in your teens or your 20s and get away with it, right? We have to really pay attention to that. So when you look at obesity, look at all these diseases. You look at breathing problems, heart attacks, depression, type 2 diabetes, hernias, bone problems, thrombosis, high cholesterol, arthritis, but not to mention the social connotations that go with that, including social discrimination, fewer employment opportunities, you have cancer, lower life expectancy. So really, really important to pay attention to that and make sure that we're avoiding, creating a body that's good with lots of lean muscle mass, that's very lean, and keeping our body fat percentages down, okay? It's very important. In kids especially, we see lots of kids in the office, and there are a few kids in the office that are significantly overweight. And the most challenging thing as chiropractors is to be able to talk to parents about their children developing bad habits, right? So, and we see this quite often actually, and this is a really eye-opening slide. And here's a neat study. There was a study done a few years ago that talked about, they showed children pictures of other children that were quote-unquote different than them. So in the pictures, there was a child who was slightly overweight. There was a child who was of a cultural minority. There was a child who had Down syndrome, and there was an obese child. 96% of the kids said that the obese child would be the least one that they would like to be a friend to. So they actually ranked it, the kids, responding very non-judgmentally. Who would you like to be the friend with most? And they would rank all the kids. It was ultimately the obese children that other kids didn't want to be friends with as much as the other kids. So kind of an eye-opening thing. So especially for children, so those of you who have kids or grandkids, really important to make sure we're encouraging them to eat well, eat good food, stay away from the junk food, and create good, lean bodies,
And just, I was going to add on whole families too. If you can make the change as a whole family, it is so much easier. And I want to say tonight, I think last year we had one guy come to the recipe night. So this year it's neat because there's actually, there's a bunch of couples here, and I think when you have your family on board with you, it makes that change so much easier. Because I know Dr. Call was talking about on one of the opening slides, sharing your testimony, how your relationships change. Sometimes that changes for the worse because your family members may not want you to change your diet. And I know Gladys, we've talked about that a little bit, right, with your family. And I know growing up, my family, especially my dad, kind of grew up meat, potatoes, vegetables. And when my mom started making some changes, he wasn't necessarily too happy about that. So the more involved you can get your family with you, it can really help to obviously keep you on track with that and support you through that, but really helps kind of set the stage and foundation for your own kids to grow up in that type of environment, eating those types of foods, and that's a benefit they enjoy for the rest of their lives.
So one thing we're going to really hit on hard tonight is we're going to hit on the dangers of sugar. Okay, we say, here's a neat slide here, our kids are drowning in sugar. There's sugar everywhere. And the scary thing is that sugar is hidden in so many different foods, and when we go through some of these labels, we're going to point out different things to try to identify in labels where sugar is really hiding, okay, and different chemicals and so on, foods that break down into sugar and these things. So we really have to pay attention to that. And that's one of the most dangerous things when it comes to nutrition. So we really want to try to identify sugars and foods that break down into sugar because they're the foods that create all the damage. And we always say too, and this is something that we're going to talk about in Nutrition 102, so I won't get into it in too much detail, but your body, the food that you put into your body will really cause your body to adapt to its hormonal state. So your body will start to adapt to a hormonal state based on the types of food you're putting in. So if you're eating foods that break down into sugar, what happens is your body creates hormones that try to break down and use the sugar for energy, but at the expense of not burning fat as efficiently. So you become either a sugar burner or a fat burner. There's usually no real in-between. So it's really important to start to change your nutrition, and that changes your hormones and cause your hormones to adapt. And what happens is when you change your hormones, that's really when healing starts to occur. And a lot of these conditions that we see, including inflammatory conditions, heart disease, cancers, arthritis, even depression and mental illness, is really tied to hormones that are triggered by high sugar diets. Okay, so that's one thing we're going to touch on tonight.
Sure. So, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that you really want to keep straight in your mind right away is that sugar is really what turns into fat. Our body has a very difficult time converting fat that we eat, so that's called dietary fat, into fat on our bodies. But any sugar that we eat, almost immediately, any extra that we don't need just to raise up our blood sugar levels, immediately gets converted into fat stores, and that's what really contributes to it. But so often I think there's this kind of pervasive mindset, and we'll talk about this again a little bit more with some of the different foods and nutrition labels that, well, I'm trying to lose fat, so naturally I should just cut out fat. And instead what typically gets replaced with that is just more sugar. So you look at something like skim milk, they take all the fat out of it, and all that's left with it is basically something like sugar water. And that happens with so many ingredients. You go to the grocery store, and we'll look through that next week, and you look through the aisles, there's everything, no fat, zero fat, no trans fats, no cholesterol, and all it is then you're getting instead sugar. But a lot of times we've kind of bought into that just because of that mindset. So really keep that straight in your mind. It also causes an entire inflammatory response in our body, creates an acidic body environment linked to mood alterations, cancer, heart disease, stroke. They literally actually classify sugar as a stimulant. And that's both the way that actually activates certain receptors in the brain that are very similar to the way that cocaine activates them, and also just in the way that it elevates your mood. If you think about it, it's late at night, you're trying to get through like the last period of the hockey game, and you're kind of feeling a little tired, instead of just heading for bed and listening to your body, typically, you head to the kitchen, you reach for a snack. Oh, what's that snack? Not usually like celery, right? It's usually like chips, or it's like, exactly, right? Something with some sugar, spikes up your energy levels, and it actually acts as a stimulant.
Very good. So the other thing too to really pay attention to, and I touched on this, is that there's such a high relationship with high sugar diets, having high insulin levels in your body, because insulin obviously reacts to sugar, and we talk about this in Nutrition 102, but there's a huge relationship to cancer. So for those of you who are cancer survivors, have perhaps been diagnosed, or are concerned about being diagnosed, this is another great reason to start to change your diet. And so here's a neat little thing, and I'd love to share this, is that some of the most current cancer research involves using something called positive emission tomography. Positive emission tomography, and that is PET scans. Okay, so you may have heard of PET scans. That's some of the most accurate research when it comes to cancer detection and development in your body. Well, it's interesting because positive emission tomography is highly related to the levels of sugar in your body, because what happens is if you have cancer cells or tumors growing in your body, those tumors have a high cancer affinity. So they really love getting sugar, a high sugar affinity, I should say, high sugar affinity. So when you eat sugar, the cancer cells really, they require a lot of blood flow, so they cause the body to build new blood vessels to feed them, and they really try to devour a lot of the sugar that's in the bloodstream. So the positive emission tomography labels the sugar, right, with an isotope, and then they do a scan of the body, and they can see where all the sugar is deposited based on where those tumors are. So it's direct relationship showing that cancer cells love sugar. So if you're feeding your body full of sugar, or foods that break down into sugar, all you're doing is feeding those cancer cells. So really, really important. And this is something I learned in detail when my sister went through her fight. And for those of you who don't know, she died at the age of 46 of cancer. Didn't know any of this stuff. My sister was not really adept at taking care of herself. And unfortunately, she really lost her fight very, very aggressively and very quickly. So really important to understand that, okay? All right. Next one. So we're going to talk about some different foods and try to identify the amount of sugar that's in these foods. So
when you're looking at some of these charts, and maybe if you've been to recipe nights in the past, we've gone through some of these, but I think when you actually see each of those cubes of sugar, which represents 1 teaspoon, so that's 4 grams of 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon. When you see it kind of represented out by that, I think it's a little bit eye-opening. It just really helps you understand how much sugar is actually in some of these products. So, your favorite trip to the, out to the theater, you don't just buy the ticket. You're also going for, something to snack on with the popcorn, with the pop. Just even something, 1 can of Coca-Cola, I believe I counted that's 10 teaspoons of sugar, so almost 40 grams of sugar in 1 can of pop. Even the vitamin water. So again, sometimes these things, sound really healthy. Vitamins, water, like what could be better than that, right? Well, the side effect of, about 8 or 9 teaspoons of sugar. So, almost as much as what's in a can of Coca-Cola is in 1 bottle of vitamin water. So again, you got to be looking at these labels, even when you're eating something. So, we talk about, sugar, we all can picture that, right? It's teaspoons of sugar that's added into something. There's also a lot of that in other types of ingredients. So, it can hide in things like what might seem like a healthy choice, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich has some sugar in peanut butters that aren't all natural. So any peanut butters, like especially the common kind of Jiffy ones, typically have added sugar into them. Obviously grape jelly, especially if it's not a natural one, is going to have added sugars into it. And then this is even a little bit misleading because those cubes of sugar are just the stuff that's on the bread. The bread itself, add about another 4 teaspoons per slice of bread. That's your white Wonder Bread. You're just wondering if there's anything good left in it, right? Even yogurts, again, seems like a healthy snack. Any of the sweetened yogurts are absolutely loaded with sugars. You've got to stay away from those. And even the energy bars, again, maybe if you're exercising halfway through your marathon, might be okay to consume, but not just if you're having a casual snack middle part of the day. Again, you're going to get just loads of sugar in that.
What's your favorite chocolate bar? Snickers. That's a good one. What else?
75%.
3 Musketeers or something? What?
75% dark.
So, 75, Heather's got to take a step forward. Okay, so, but your average Snickers bar, Mars bar, O. Henry, Coffee Crisp, 2 slices of bread has the same amount of sugar as one of those chocolate bars. So when you eat 2 slices of bread, you're actually getting the same level of sugar as a chocolate bar. Well, personally, I'd rather have the chocolate bars. Coke. How many people drink pop? Okay, and actually, Tanya and I, we were talking about this earlier today. So I'm going to tell you, that is one of the most dangerous things. That's like, pop is like gasoline for the fire for cancer cells. So if you're drinking a lot of pop, you're putting all kinds of toxic stuff in your body. So then people think, well, I'm going to drink diet pop. Well, then it's all artificially sweetened with toxic poisons like aspartame and sucralose and things. Terrible for your brain cells, your nerve cells. It's actually been shown to create dementia and Alzheimer's disease, the ingestion of lots of aspartame. So pop is just not a good choice at all. Replace it with water. There's a lot of other healthier things you can start putting into your body. Okay, so the longer the shelf life, the shorter yours. That's typically what, so we got to start to change our mindset by looking for food that we rip open the package to eat into creating more fresh choices like we have obviously here tonight. One thing, getting back to the pop, these are 7 effects of soda. So this is something to think about here. So these soda, so for instance, Coke is full of phosphoric acid, so it does weaken the bones. It's actually been shown to start to create osteoporosis because it disrupts the whole calcium pool in the body. It weakens the teeth. Excessive artificial sweeteners make you crave more sugar. So if you're having a lot of artificial sweeteners, your brain is still telling you to crave more sugar. So it's tough to change your body hormonally. The color is made from all kinds of chemicals, caramel color and so on. It's purely cosmetic. It doesn't add any flavor. Yet it's very tainted with all kinds of carcinogens. Okay, I'm going to show you some labels tonight to look at in certain foods that show different dyes in foods as well, which are very harmful. Formaldehyde, right? That's a carcinogen, so you find that in soda as well. High fructose corn syrup, one of the most damaging things and we're going to show you that on labels too. So that's something to really recognize. High fructose corn syrup in a lot of different foods. High fructose corn syrup in a lot of different foods. That was totally ambiguous. Yeah, you got to be really cautious with that. That was very funny, man. I never would have noticed. Okay, potassium benzoate is a preservative that can be broken down in your body into benzene, right? And again, that's carcinogenic, and lots of food dyes. Okay, so soda is full of all kinds of just terrible stuff. As we mentioned, aspartame causes all kinds of problems. And I think I might have mentioned this at the dinner, but aspartame years ago, it was around just around the turn of the century, that the FDA in the United States wanted to take aspartame off the shelf because it was linked to so many damaging things. But they said if they took it off the shelf, it would cause a stock market crash because there's over 6,000 products in the grocery store that have aspartame in them. So they decided just to put the warnings out there. So here's the warning, is that stop eating foods with aspartame. Artificial sweeteners are not good for you. Again, like you see it everywhere. Diet sodas, tabletop sweeteners, chewing gums, flavored water, sugar-free products, drink powders, cooking sauces, children's medicines, cereal, all kinds of stuff. It's in everything. So, buyer beware, formaldehyde. And look at what it's all been linked to, Insomnia, a lot of emotional disorders, mental health issues, insomnia, depression, anxiety attacks, muscle spasm. It's a neurotoxin. Migraines. Okay, so let's start looking at labels here. And I want to just point out, we're going to go through this very briefly because again, we go through it with Nutrition 102, but I want to point out some very specific words to look for when you look at a label, when you read a label, that's going to give you some alarm bells on what not to start putting in your body, okay? So, go for it.
So, a couple things that I'm not. Oh yeah, this is a tortilla one. So, chips, right? Everyone loves our tortillas to snack on, but you start looking through the ingredients list. White corn, vegetable oil. That is one of the key things that you want to look for in any product to avoid, and it is in just about any baked good that you buy. So any of the chips, any like the crispers, a lot of crackers, they all use vegetable oil because it's cheap. The problem is that it very quickly starts to turn rancid. If you heat vegetable oils, they start to oxidize. And again, most of the cells, basically all the cells in our body are completely surrounded by fat. Literally the outer layer of every cell is fat. And when you start consuming a lot of these fats that can be very damaging, they start to get incorporated into your cell membrane. They call it cellular congestion. And then that's what starts to create damaged cells in our body. So looking at those ingredients, one of the key ones you want to watch out for, corn, obviously that can very quickly, again, break down into starch, breaks down into sugar, but then also the vegetable oils. And then also there's a partially hydrogenated, so anything that says hydrogenated, again, basically you can read it into that and say damaged fat is where you want to stay away from and avoid that.
So that's the thing really to recognize, and it's interesting because it can be deceptive, because you look at the last line on here and it says no preservatives added. So you think, oh, this is, it's made to be deceptively healthy by saying no preservatives, but it's already got all the bad stuff in it. So this is a key word. Dr. Vince mentioned hydrogenated. That's a really key word, because hydrogenated oils are modified oils, and they do cause, when you ingest them into your body, they cause platelet clumping. They'll cause your blood vessels to start to clog up. So hydrogenated oils are not a good thing to put into your body on a regular basis. So here's some just regular crackers, okay? So we look through our cupboard, see some Townhouse or Ritz crackers or whatever kind of crackers they are. They're all pretty much the same as far as their ingredients go. So we look at the ingredient list here. So as soon as you see the word enriched, so you see this right at the top, enriched flour, that's the main ingredient. So it says wheat flour. Enriched basically means that it's modified. So anything that says enriched has been processed, it's modified, it's not very natural. So, and again, flour breaks down into sugar, so you gotta be careful with that. And then they go through some different chemicals here, the niacin and thiamine mononitrate, vitamin B1 riboflavin. So you think, well, you got some B vitamins there, great, folic acid. But then you get down here and it says, partially, again, hydrogenated soybean oil. Soybean's a rancid oil, so it's not a good, healthy oil. Or cottonseed oil is another one with TBHQ. So that's tertiary butyl something or other. I can't remember the exact chemical name for it, but that's a preservative. It preserves shelf life. So if you see something that says TBHQ, it's basically put into the food to preserve it. So you can put it on the shelf and it'll sit there for years until you open it and it'll stay fresh, but it's full of chemicals. So that again is not a good thing to be putting into your body. Tertiary butyl, it'll come to me. Anyway, hydroquinone, I think it is. Tertiary butyl hydroquinone for freshness. So then you look down here and you say, well, it's got sugar in it, and then salt here, and then you see the famous words corn syrup, okay, more sugar, and then you got some baking soda and some chemicals, and then look at right at the bottom here, high fructose corn syrup, okay? So some very, very damaging things. So you want to be really cautious with those.
So again, graham crackers, enriched white flour, and just in case, enriched wheat flour, and just in case you're wondering, they have the double asterisk, so that there's actually like wheat at the bottom, just in case you're wondering. And then, again, looking through all the ingredients list, they list sugar, a little bit lower down, high fructose corn syrup, honey, and then a couple other things in there too, but cereal syrup, malted cereal syrup. The key thing when you look at ingredients lists, they have to list them in order of quantity. So it's like an ingredient, whatever you have the most of, they have to list first on an ingredient list. So a lot of times what they do with these different products, they'll actually use different forms of sugar so that the number one ingredient isn't sugar. So that's why, you look at even something like this, your honey graham crackers, and literally there's about 3 or 4 or 5 different types of sugar ingredients that they're adding in to kind of hide that and not have to list it as a number one ingredient.
We're going to go through, in Nutrition 102, we'll go through the nutritional labels where it talks about how to identify the amount of sugar, the amount of protein and whatnot in each label. So we go through that in detail to help you to recognize exactly what type of calories are in the food per serving size and how to really try to identify these things. Here's some very simple Lipton soup, onion soup mix, okay? And this is one thing I really want you to pay attention to here. This is something that you really got to take a look at. You see here, ingredients, onions, salt, cornstarch. Again, cornstarch breaks down into sugar. Corn syrup, solids, again, breaks down to sugar. Now you got some color. So caramel color, that's the same thing they put in Coke, right? Caramel color. Hydrolyzed, so if you see something that says hydrolyzed or hydrogenated, again, that's a sign that it's very modified, not a good thing to put in your body. And then you come down here, partially hydrogenated, again, soybean oil, very rancid oil. And then you see here the monosodium glutamate, so MSG, monosodium glutamate. Terrible, terrible, terrible. That's one of the worst additives in food. They put it in there to really flavor the food, because what happens with MSG, like aspartame is a neurotoxin. When you eat MSG, it immediately gets ingested, gets absorbed very fast into your digestive system, into the bloodstream, goes to your brain very quickly. It gives you the same sensation as an amphetamine, like crystal meth, an amphetamine, or cocaine. It stimulates those brain cells very quickly, so they fire very rapidly. So you have a euphoric sensation when you eat this food. So your brain associates this food with something that's very pleasurable, great taste. That's why they add it to the food. However, what happens is those brain cells, because they fire so rapidly, they die very quickly. And that causes, over time, your brain to start to rewire these pathways, and it's one of the main things that lead to something called neurofibrillary tangles, beta amyloid plaques, which are the main cause of Alzheimer's disease. So again, this has been shown scientifically for this to happen. So again, that's something to really start to identify. Try to take foods like that out of your nutritional plan. That's not something to be eating regularly, okay? Here's another one here. This is another label of some, I think these were some pancakes. And you see down here, you see bleached enriched flour. So they've taken, when it says bleached and enriched, it's modified. They've taken all of the nutrients out of the flour anyway. So there's no nutrients in there at all. It's just filler. And you sort of read your way down here. Then you see sugar, dextrose, again, more sugar, baking powder, baking soda, monocalcium phosphate, sodium aluminum phosphate, again, partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. And then you see your soybean and cottonseed oils. But then I want you to look down at the bottom here, colored with yellow dye number 5 and red dye number 40. Those dyes have been shown to be huge triggers for children with ADD and ADHD. So with any type of mental illness, learning disabilities, so those dyes are directly related to those types of conditions. So something to, again, be very aware of, okay?
You know, like like hamburger helper, rice-a-roni types of things. So basically your food additives so that, you don't have to actually put in individual spices. But, again, you look through the list of it and it's just, it's just artificial ingredient. And right at the very bottom, you see a few things like folic acid, some of, riboflavin, some different things like that are actually nutritious. But the majority of it is, beef broth, garlic. These are all different things that, in a lot of cases, MSG, monosodium glutamate. For most ingredients or products, the more or longer the ingredient list is, the more dangerous it is for you. So sometimes if you're choosing between different types of products, look for the one that with less ingredients on the list, and that's going to be the healthiest one for you. So all these ones, they're just toxic chemicals. Our body just has a difficult time processing them, dealing with them. It puts it into a stressful response. And that's why even something, if you're going to drink pop, which I really suggest you don't, it's actually better for you to go with the actual pop than the diet one, because our body knows how to process it. It recognizes the ingredients, it can eliminate it. But if you're getting all these toxic additives and preservatives and other chemicals, it's actually very hard for our body to recognize that.
There's another word I just want to point out here, and that is when you see this one here, autolyzed yeast extract. So something that says autolyzed, so we said the hydrolyzed, hydrogenated, autolyzed. Again, that's very genetically modified. So that's, again, a word that should send off big alarm bells. So you don't want to be eating a lot of foods that have something that says autolyzed. So Nutri-Grain bars. So again, a lot of people will look at that label and say, well, there's a healthy choice. It's a Nutri-Grain bar. I'll buy those for my children. So once we start looking at the labels here, say, well, okay, let's look at this right here. And so we say, well, serving size for one bar, 140 calories for one bar. Okay, well, that's kind of reasonable. Roughly, that's about the same as a chocolate bar when you think about it. It's kind of mid-100s. But you come down here and you say, okay, well, we look at the fat content, cholesterol, sodium, and then look way down here at the total carbohydrate. So 27 grams of carbohydrate. So one bar gives you the recommended daily value of almost 10% of your daily value of carbohydrates. So that's a lot of carbohydrates. Remember, Dr. Vince said 4 grams of carbohydrates is 1 teaspoon of sugar. So one bar, when you divide that out, has roughly 7 to 8 teaspoons of sugar. Okay, so think that's a lot of sugar for one bar. But then, so you go to the ingredient list here, and look how long this ingredient list is. And I want to point out a few things on it. So it's really the filling. The filling of these bars is full of all kinds of terrible stuff, preservatives and so on. But again, it's got some things that should raise some alarm bells. And remember, we said that the most abundant ingredients are the first ones listed. Well, if you look at this, high fructose corn syrup, right off the bat. So it's full of high fructose corn syrup. It has a long shelf life. It's preserved on the shelf. It'll last a long time. You can put it in your cupboard for years, open it years later, and it's still quote unquote fresh. But it is a very sweet sensation when you eat it, right? So it gives you that pleasing sweet taste. It satisfies those carbohydrate cravings. And then you go down here, you got corn syrup, glycerin, fructose, sugar, maltodextrin. All those things break down into sugar. Every one of them, okay? So modified cornstarch, again, it's full of all these things. And then you look down here and you see partially hydrogenated soybean oil. Again, high fructose corn syrup. So now they're talking about the pastry. And calcium carbonate. There's all kinds of stuff that's really not good for your body. And another word I want to point out to you down here, if you go down here to almost to the bottom where it says carrageenan. Carrageenan, again, if you see that word, usually that's a hidden word for MSG. So carrageenan is full of MSG. Okay, so again, a word to look for on labels. Okay. All right, so now processed meats. You want to talk about salami?
Well, this is just one, obviously one of many, but these are all kind of your deli meats, your processed meats. Literally in countries in Europe, these meats are literally banned because they've been proven to be carcinogenic. So these are the ones where you hear about nitrites, nitrates, all these different additives. Those do little more than just color the meat and make it more appealing or appetizing to look at. There's absolutely no reason to put them in. There is no health benefit to them. If anything, it's actually very damaging and potentially cancer-causing to be eating those types of meats. So a lot of times red meats get a bit of a bad rap, right? You hear about, oh, you shouldn't be eating as many red meats. You want to stay away from those types of things. In moderation, it can actually be very healthy. It can be very healthy sources of protein if you're getting healthy red meats. But when it's these types of processed meats, and especially when they add so many things in, these are literally like the leftovers of other cuts of meat that they just grind up, they put together, into a sausage, they put it into a salami, bologna, all those different things, and they are just absolutely not anything like what meat really should be.
Yeah. So deli meats, again, are probably not the best thing to have, and I'm glad you mentioned that because they do see the interest. The food industry is very smart, and they're all about making money, so nothing goes to waste, and that includes ears, hooves, tails, everything. So all that stuff gets ground up. They add all kinds of spices to it, preservatives, and they put it into this loaf and slice it up, and then that becomes your lunch meat. But it is filled with chemicals, nitrates, sulfites, all these different things, which again have been shown to be very similar to the MSG, to those neurotoxins and excitotoxins that go into the brain. So again, processed meats, and you see a picture close up here on the next slide, you can see things like this in the meat. Very not natural things, okay? So a lot of chemicals and whatnot, okay? Here's another one here. These are, here's another piece. So you can see the fat, like the fat content when the meat is broken down and sliced up. These are all just pieces of fat content in the meat. So again, it's not healthy stuff. Hot dogs, right? That goes into the same category. So whether they're hot dogs, sausages, again, it's all ground up stuff. They add a lot of spices and sulfites and flavorings to them. Not a good choice. Here's a piece of a hot dog or a piece of a lunch meat kind of thing, again, with just pieces of just fat. That's all it is just fat in there. And remember, and we talk about this I think in Nutrition 101, for those of you who were at the last nutrition seminar, pigs, which the majority of lunch meats are made from pork, right? The majority of them. Some are from beef and other animals, but the majority are from pork. Well, pigs have a very high fat content, and they do so, they're created to withstand a very toxic environment. So typically, throughout history, pigs have grown up in a very, very toxic environment. They live in their own mud and their own feces, and and they can survive very well in that. Largely because of the high amount of fat cells, because the fat cells act like a toxin. So pigs ingest a lot of toxic stuff, their food, everything that they eat, the environment they live in, it's very toxic, but the toxins build up and get filtered by those fat cells. So when you butcher a pig, and that gets made into lunch meat, you're actually eating a lot of the fat that was in the pig that is full of toxic stuff, right? Carcinogenic, okay? So we want to get into some better choices. So enough of the bad stuff, let's get into some better choices. So here's some things to look at to start putting into your nutritional plan that are going to create health. We're going to start to build health.
So we talked a little bit about some of the yogurts already, any of the ones that have artificial sweeteners or additives, your blueberry yogurt, your strawberry yogurt. Don't even touch those ones, stay away from those. Better options to go with are like a full fat yogurt that has just no additives at all in it. So you look at one, this is actually a goat milk yogurt, which is an even better option than a dairy yogurt. People tend to tolerate goat milk better than some of the proteins in cow's milk. You can get cow's milk that's made with healthier types of milk. It is difficult to get. You're typically not going to find it in a grocery store. But goat's milk yogurt is another option to go with that. And if you go to the next slide, you can see when you actually look at the ingredients list in it, it's literally just a handful of ingredients. Pasteurized whole goat milk, tapioca pectin, live culture, so those are some of the bacteria, Lacidophilus, so those are actually healthy bacteria that you want to have in your gut to help promote a healthy environment, helps with vitamin K, vitamin D absorption, those are all healthy bacteria to have there.
So if you're going to have yogurt, Greek yogurt's a nice choice because it is made with goat milk. And goat milk, the protein in goat milk is much easier to digest than dairy milk, right? So dairy is really not a good choice. The protein in dairy is very tough to digest, creates a lot of allergies in the body. And for those of you who are concerned about calcium, don't be fooled because you don't get your pool of calcium in your body from dairy. In fact, all the dairy that you eat or ingest or drink, the calcium has to be added afterwards because once they pasteurize it and once they homogenize it and all this stuff, it kills off all the protein. Not only kills off all the protein, but it destroys the calcium. So they have to add vitamin D back to it. It's fortified with vitamin D and with calcium after the fact. So, and it's really not a great source of calcium. You get most of your calcium from green leafy vegetables. That's where the abundance comes from, okay? And it's also good. We always talk about supplementing with a good whole, like a multivitamin that contains calcium as well. That's a much better source of calcium than eating dairy, okay?
Just want to add in, even talking about Greek yogurt, you do have to be a little careful with this because traditionally Greek yogurt was made with goat's milk. Nowadays, and I don't want to make the dairy industry, or I grew up on a farm. I milked, I spent a lot of time on the wrong end of a cow. So, I have nothing against farmers, but it was literally actually the dairy industry lobbying to kind of expand the definition of Greek yogurt to allow it to be made with dairy or with cow's milk. So if you look in the store, you do have to be very careful because most Greek yogurts, the ones that you just see in kind of a big section of the cold aisle, will actually be made with cow's milk. So you have very specifically have to look for kind of a traditional Greek yogurt or look at the ingredients.
That was utterly ridiculous. That opens up the world. We just opened it up for all kinds of jokes. And I spent the life on the wrong end of a cow. Okay. All right. Okay. Here we go. Back to business. All right. So we'll look at some. So you want to add some spices to your foods. There's lots of good, healthy spices. There's lots of bad spices, but lots of good, healthy spices. So here's something to take a look at. So here's an example. Liquid aminos. This is made with fermented soybeans, which is actually a good, healthy thing to put into your body. It does help your gut bacteria, and you can look at the ingredient label here. It just has some vegetable protein from soybeans and purified water. So minimal ingredient list, okay? So it's a healthier choice. Let's look at another one here. Here's some tahini. Well, tahini, if you've never had tahini, what it is, it's ground up sesame seeds. It's actually very good and it's very healthy for you. But if you look at the label here, you'll see ingredients: organically, mechanically hulled sesame seeds. That's it. So there's no other additives, preservatives. It's a good, healthy choice. So tahini is you get some good, healthy fats out of tahini. So that's a nice thing to have. Tahini is not an island in the South Pacific either. Tahini. Here's roasted yellow peppers. This is another nice choice. You can see here that these are, again, the ingredient list is very minimal. Roasted Florina yellow peppers. It has some water, some vinegar in it. Sea salt, right, which is a good choice. So if you're going to start using salt, sea salt's a nice transition to make rather than the iodized salt. If you look at iodized salt in the label, you actually see sugar. They add sugar to iodized salt, like the Sifto, the regular salt you buy. So switching to sea salt is a much better, more natural option. And grape must, which is just a natural preservative.
Do they mess around with the sea salt like they did the Greek yogurt?
Again, it depends on the brand. Honestly, I would recommend staying away from iodized salts in general, especially if there's any types of concerns with thyroid problems. We're not going to talk about it a lot here tonight, but a lot of thyroid problems are actually underlying kind of an autoimmune condition. So if people are taking, even they think, well, I have low thyroid, so maybe if I take some extra iodine, that'll help my thyroid to produce more. But if it is related to an autoimmune component to it, putting iodine or adding in iodine, especially with the salt, is it's kind of like pouring gasoline on a fire, it can really aggravate the symptoms of that and make the problem worse. So,
do they say though this is sea salt, and then you look at it and it says iodized?
unfortunately, a lot of cases it will. So again, you have to look at the ingredients. You have to like Himalayan, like the pink crystal salts are another great option too. You know, you grind them up fresh, and there's actually a lot more beneficial minerals in that as well. So.
You just used my analogy about pouring gasoline on the fire. I thought you were going to bring up another dairy farmer analogy. Like, I'm busier than a one-armed dairy farmer.
Yeah. Is the Himalayan salt better than sea salt? Is one better than the other?
Personally, I think Himalayan, you know, if you're going to use some salt anyway, that's all I use because you might as well try to get some more of those minerals that you wouldn't get in most other cases.
So here's another neat one. For those of you who don't eat almond butter is a really nice thing to put into your diet. Almond butter has good healthy fats, right? It's going to help your body start to shift into creating good healthy fats. So adding this in is a great idea. It's definitely a better option than just peanut butter, right? It gives you much healthier fat content than peanut butter. So if you look at the almond butter label, you see creamy and raw almond butter, which is fantastic. You look at the label and it says 100% organic raw almonds. That's it. That's all that's in it. So very natural. You know, it's a great thing to add in. Almond butter is not inexpensive, right? It's definitely, you know, it's costly. But to have a jar in your fridge, to have a little bit, you know, if you're going to have it on some celery or add it, sometimes I'll just take like a spoonful of it just as a snack. Yeah. It's a great thing to add. Okay. Here's another one. This is cashew butter. Cashews are good, healthy nuts. So if you do like nuts, I encourage people to eat nuts. Nuts are a good thing to eat, but tree nuts. Okay, tree nuts are a good thing to eat. Tree nuts are much healthier for you. And where do peanuts grow? They grow on the ground, right? And so tree nuts typically don't grow on the ground. They grow on a tree, hence the name tree nuts. So it's interesting though because peanuts actually have what's called a mycotoxin associated with them. And that's why you'll see nowadays, a lot of children have peanut allergies because of this mycotoxin in the peanuts, which can actually cause anaphylactic reactions. Less apt to happen with tree nuts, right? So tree nuts are a much healthier choice for you. All right, so here's the cashew butter. And again, you look at the ingredient, 100% organic raw cashews. Perfectly natural, that's it. No preservatives, nothing else, just cashews. And this is really neat about this company that it says notably absent on this list. Notably absent, pesticides, artificial flavors, colors, preservatives, stabilizers, and added oil and GMOs. Notably absent. I thought that was pretty neat. Good marketing tool. Yes?
For the almonds and like cashews, is there like a kind of limit to eating them? Like,
yeah, okay, so...
like 10?
Yeah, great question. So remember that when you're eating that fat, you are getting a lot of calories. We actually have another slide that I do in another talk that shows a bowl of almonds, like probably about 10 or 12 almonds, and a Twinkie, okay? And they're the exact same caloric content. So you can't necessarily judge your health by calories. That's old school thinking. So 10 almonds obviously are going to give you good, healthy calories into your body. And obviously a Twinkie is going to give you the same amount of calories, but a lot of very unhealthy stuff. So you do have to watch the caloric content, especially if you're watching your weight, but adding good fat is a good thing. Okay, so we're less concerned about the calories, right? But I wouldn't go binging on a whole bag of 1 kilogram almonds kind of thing. Yeah.
One other thing too, it doesn't hurt to do your homework on some of the nuts because almonds especially are actually pasteurized nowadays. Sometimes they say that, sometimes they don't, but typically they are pasteurized. And there's either a steam method of doing it or there's a chemical method of pasteurizing almonds. So you want to try to find ones that use the steam method. I do believe there's some raw ones that you can get at Costco that are the steam method. So anyway, just something to be aware of.
So the next one is, now here's some peanut butter. So I'm sure everybody's got probably a jar of peanut butter at home. Okay?
Oh yeah.
So now, this would be a great switch. So this is a really easy, nice switch for everybody, so instead of buying the Jif or the Kraft, the regular peanut butter, which is full of sugar and full of hydrogenated oil, is make the switch to a natural peanut butter. Okay, there's a little different taste to it, but the biggest thing is that you're not getting all of the sugar, because peanut butter is full of sugar, all right? Let's not kid ourselves. It's got a lot of sugar content in it, so you have to be really cautious. You still have calories, like there's still good fats in peanut butter, but you don't get the sugar with natural peanut butter. So if you look at the label here, you see on a natural peanut butter, it says ingredients, organic, roasted, unblanched, which means that they're not modified. The nutrients, any nutrients are in there, still in there, they haven't taken out. Valencia peanuts, that's it. So it says they're made in a factory. It may contain some of like cashews, almonds, or whatnot, because they make them in the same factory, so they have to put that on the label. But there's no other oils. There's no hydrogenated oil, vegetable oils. There's no sugar in there. So that's a great switch to have. Now, if you buy the natural peanut butter, it separates. You'll see the oil comes to the top, and you have to keep it in the fridge. It keeps it a little firmer that way. Turn it upside down, and all the oil will sift to the bottom. That when you open it, you get the peanut butter. You have to stir it up, and you get the nice peanut butter. We use that at home. And it's a great switch to make. So I would encourage everybody, next time you're out shopping, just try some natural peanut butter. It's a nice way to go.
How's that?
So here's some olives, right? Now olives are a great thing to put into your diet. So we talk about all the bad oils like cottonseed, vegetable oil, canola oil. Good olive oil is a really good oil to put in. It's full of omega-3s. It's a really good healthy oil to put in. The other one is coconut oil or grapeseed oil. Even avocado oil is a good oil to put in. As far as cooking goes, coconut oil is one of the most stable. Olive oil is not bad as long as you don't smoke it. You should never heat an oil up to the point where it starts to smoke, because then it destabilizes, becomes very rancid, and that becomes trans fats and carcinogenic and so on. So, but those are the better stable oils to cook with. Cooking with vegetable oil, canola oil, cottonseed, or peanut oil, stuff like that, they're very unstable and they break down very, very quickly. The other thing is, I would suggest buy oil in a glass bottle. So if you buy olive oil, glass bottle, it'll last longer, because when you buy it in a plastic bottle, sometimes the toxins from the plastic starts to leach into the oil. So glass bottle is much better. Even better, if you want to really be specific, a darker glass bottle, because that way the light can't destabilize the oil, right? If it's left in the sunlight or in the daylight, okay? So olives here are a good choice. And again, you look at the olive, it says green olives, water. Now here's the only thing with this one, is that it is made with sunflower oil. Obviously it would be better if it was just put in olive oil, but that's more expensive. So sunflower oil for the production is a little more costly. So these are doused in sunflower oil, but it has some sea salt, herbs of Provence, and citric acid. So generally a healthier choice in that respect, okay? Now here's a drink. So this is interesting. So we talk about sugary drinks. Okay, so obviously the pops and Gatorades and things like that, terrible for you because they're full of sugar. And don't be fooled by the marketing, not healthy choices. So if you want to have something that has some flavor to it, here's a nice thing. So you can look at this Lakewood Pure Lemon Juice, not pressed. Contents, fresh pressed juice and puree from whole, ripe, certified organic lemons. Nothing added to it, right? So you can take this concentrated lemon juice, pure lemon juice, and you could mix it with water, maybe add some stevia to it, right, to sweeten it. So that's a natural sweetener. We'll talk about that in just a second. So, and that would be just a nice refreshing drink. And then you know you're not getting a lot of sugar, you're getting a nice healthier choice. All right.
We didn't talk about that a lot tonight, but a lot of the fruit juices you do have to be careful with too, because they'll have as much sugar as some of the pop. So even, you look at all these different options that especially parents give to their kids, we'll give them apple juice instead of pop, we'll give them orange juice instead of pop, all these different things. But unfortunately, a lot of those things, they have literally more sugar in them than pop and some of the other sodas. So, if you think about like 1 8-ounce glass of orange juice, there's something like, I forget what it is, but it's something like 5 or 6 oranges that get squished, pressed to make one. You'd never sit down and eat like 5 or 6 oranges typically. And with that, you get all the pulp and other things that are very beneficial, healthy fibers. But if you're just drinking the juice, it's just the extracted, basically, fructose sugar that's in there, and you want to try to limit that as much as possible.
Okay, so for those of you who use mayonnaise, here's a nice transition. So we go to Vegenaise now, which is non-dairy. It's not made with eggs, and it's made with healthier oil. You see this one, Vegenaise, is made with grapeseed oil. So grapeseed, and that's the one I forgot to mention, is a more stable oil. So grapeseed, coconut, olive oil, avocado oil, those are stable and healthier oils. So this one you see is made with grapeseed oil, Vegenaise. So it says right on here, egg-free, no cholesterol, dairy-free. So it's got no dairy, no eggs in it. Good healthy choice. If you want to mix it with salads or something, say you want to have like a salmon salad or make a chicken salad or something and mix it with some sort of dressing, this is a nice dressing to use instead. And you can see here again, made with grapeseed oil, filtered water. It does have some brown rice syrup in there, which is going to break down into some sugar, but a minimal amount. Apple cider vinegar, which is again a good healthy choice for you. Some soy protein, sea salt, mustard flour, lemon juice concentrate. So that's definitely a better step in the right direction, rather than just your Miracle Whip or regular mayonnaise and dressings and so on.
you know, there are different options out there if you really do love snacking on some of those things that do come, you know, so here's an example, wheat-free, gluten-free. If you go to the next slide there, Dr. Collin, you know, this is an example where instead of some of the gluten-containing flours, you know, it's made with short grain brown rice flour, whole quinoa, filtered water, sesame seeds, flax seeds, so caraway seeds, tamari, so that's gluten-free soy sauce. So, you know, and some of these products that are out there, they're you know, they're literally made with seeds. They're made with different like quinoas for protein. So there's options are out there. You don't have to go to something with grains. These different grain-free options are available, and that's what you want to look for if you want to go with some crackers, things like that.
So that's a much better choice as far as glycemic index. So a cracker like that would not spike your blood sugar as much as something like a Ritz cracker or those Townhouse that we showed you earlier, okay? Because of the lack of wheat. It doesn't have wheat in it. So those products that are in there, those ingredients that are in there, break down in your body a lot slower and will spike your blood sugar a lot slower than something like a Ritz cracker, okay? So it's a good, healthy choice. Here's coconut oil. So if you're gonna buy coconut oil, really look for the virgin coconut oil, okay? Extra virgin coconut oil. And that's the coconut oil that actually smells or tastes like coconut, okay? There's other types of coconut oil that are not extra virgin, and some of them don't taste like coconut, but they're not as good for you, okay? This is the one to use, extra virgin coconut oil. And you'll see on here ingredients, coconut oil. That's it. It's the only ingredient, okay? Hemp seed. This is a nice thing to start adding in. So if you want to use hemp seed, sprinkle some on your salads, put it in your protein shakes or smoothies and whatnot. It gives you a good source of protein. Hemp is a good source of protein and good healthy fats at the same time. So there's some good choices with hemp. Nice thing to add in. You can grind it up, you know, make it into a very fine powder, or you can just sprinkle the seeds on. It does provide good healthy sources of nutrients. Okay, so that's a nice thing to add in. Stevia. Okay, so for those of you who don't have stevia, this is a good thing to start putting in. You can get stevia now. Most of the grocery stores carry it on some level. And obviously, like places like Goodness Me or some of the health food stores, you can get it there. And there's all kinds of different brands of stevia. Now, you have to be careful because some brands may leave a little bit of a small aftertaste, like a bitter aftertaste. Like if you use it for your coffee or drinks, it's going to taste a little different than sugar, but other brands don't. So it's kind of trial and error. Find which one works for you. But this is a nice thing to add in. So if you like sugar in your drinks and your hot drinks or whatnot, or if you use any type of sweetener at home, this is a nice sweetener to start to add in. And you can buy it in bulk. You can use it in baking goods. You know, you can use it in all kinds of different things. But the neat thing about stevia, it's natural. It's not like an artificial sweetener, and it's made just from a plant, right? So there's very natural ingredients, and it does not spike the blood sugar. So it's a really good, healthy choice for sweeteners. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about kombucha. How many people had kombucha? Did you try some?
Great.
If you haven't tried some, definitely have some. So this is a nice thing to start adding in. Okay, we started carrying it at the office because it really is a good, healthy choice. Now, there's a lot of different things and products that can help your body start to build up its own normalized bacteria in your gut. Kombucha is one that works very, very well. So there's fermented products like kefir. Yogurt's a fermented product because it has a bacteria culture. Kefir, you know, a few other products on the market, but kombucha is a really popular one. So Kim keeps some at home all the time and drinks it very regularly. She's got her boys drinking it. We have it at family dinners and stuff, and so instead of a bottle of wine on the table, we'll have a bottle of kombucha. It's very flavorful. And the neat thing, it's made actually with what's called a SCOBY. So the mushroom is a SCOBY. It's made with a mushroom. So each bottle will have a little bit of that SCOBY in it. And the SCOBY causes the kombucha to ferment. So it creates a normal, healthy bacteria. So when you ingest it, it helps replenish your own body's flora of bacteria in your gut. So that helps your body with digestion, with all kinds of different conditions. If you're ever in the office and you watch, we play some of the videos with Dr. Mark Hyman, he talks about the connection between gut health and brain health, and there is a huge connection. Because when you're putting bad food into your body, you might not realize it, but that does affect you emotionally and mentally. A lot of depressive disorders, and I'm learning this now through the course that I'm taking, are truly related to nutrients and gut health, right? The lack of supplementation in your body. This is a great thing to start putting in, not just for gut health, but for overall body health and emotional wellness too. So it's a really neat thing to start trying. And just have a little sip of it a day, like a small little glass, like we're serving a little Dixie cup a day. And that, again, just is enough to start to restore your own body. So Kathy, Kathy's Kombucha, the girl who makes this, lives in Burlington. She got into kombucha through her struggle going through with breast cancer. So she's a breast cancer survivor, and she attributes a lot of her healing, very natural progression in her care for breast cancer. She went very alternative and very natural, and she's had great success by changing her diet, getting off the sugar, and adding kombucha to her diet. So she started making her own, and it's become her own little business now. So she has her own little business of Kathy's Kombucha.
Awesome.
So yeah, so it's really good stuff. And so here we have all kinds of different flavors of it now. So we buy all of our kombucha from Kathy. All right, so last little bit. Now we want to talk to you a little bit, obviously as chiropractors, we really focus on spine and nervous system, but there's some really neat stuff when it comes to relationship between spine and nervous system and gut health and healing. And this is going to be hopefully very eye-opening for you.
Well, I always think the biggest thing is when we talk about whether it's nutrition, whether we talk about nervous system, is really it's all about balance. And we talk about 5 essentials in our office, and you probably learned about some of them already if you've been through to some of our different workshops or dinners. But we always talk about that they're 5 essentials. It's not like the 5 options where it's like I'm kind of like getting my back adjusted, but not so much into cutting out the sugar. Like you can't go one without the other, because we can take we will be adjusting patients, we can do our best possible work with them, but if they eat diets or consume foods that are very inflammatory, it is very, very damaging to their spine. And I know I have patients where I can literally tell if she's had, her favorite drink is Pepsi, and just by how easy or difficult it is to adjust her that week, I can literally just be like, "Do you have some Pepsi this week?" She'll be like, "Yeah, I did." Because her joints are so inflamed, they're so irritated, she's uncomfortable, and then it sets off those types of symptoms. So.
Yeah, very true. So now here's some interesting stuff, and we talk about obviously all the warning signs to show, and this is, I mean, I think the only person here that doesn't get their spine adjusted, this is something really to pay attention to, because there's a lot of warning signs that will show that your body is in a state of subluxation, so your body's not really adapting to your environment. And that's the greatest thing about chiropractic. When we adjust the spine, we allow that nervous system to become more adaptable to its environment. So, in other words, it doesn't necessarily guarantee you're never going to have pain, or you're never going to have a headache, or you're never going to have an injury. But here's the thing, when you do have an injury, if you're adjusted regularly, your body has a better ability to adapt and therefore heal. So a lot of people that have been getting adjusted for a long time, maybe they do something, or out raking the garden or whatnot, they're sore the next day, but typically they heal up very quickly because they've been adjusted very regularly, so the body adapts a lot faster. And that applies not just to physical pain, but also to organ health as well. So there's a huge connection here, and it says here, malabsorption in your spine. So I was just talking to somebody today about the fact that since they've started chiropractic care, and I won't mention who it is, but she's here tonight, that I'm actually starting to lose weight. Well, that's not uncommon, because that starts to happen. When you start getting your spine adjusted, guess what happens? The nerves start working better. You have better nerve supply to your gut, better nerve supply to your intestines, and immediately your body starts working more efficiently. When you start working more efficiently, it takes less energy to do certain tasks. Your body just starts to transition. You start to burn more fat. You start to function better. So, of course, hence you start to lose weight. We see this all the time. This is not unusual. So we've had people come into the office. There's a fellow here, and this is from a few years ago, lost 140 pounds after he started, and he'd been on all kinds of diets and all kinds of things in the past. Obviously, we help him with his nutrition, so it's not all just you start getting adjusted, you lose 140 pounds. It's kind of like the Stephen King novel. What's that, Steve? Thinner, I think it is? Yeah. Anyway, but he made some incredible changes that he had not been able to make before, but a large part of that was because we got his spine back in the proper alignment. So yeah, he'd lost over 100 pounds. But here's some neat changes that we saw, and these are his x-rays, is that, with the curve in his neck, he went from a very, very straight x-ray to getting almost a perfect curve back in his neck. So right there, by taking all of the stress off those areas and off his spinal cord, the brain can communicate with the rest of the body more efficiently, things start working better, hormones start to change, your body balance starts to change, and guess what? He's able to lose the weight that he couldn't lose before. I don't know if you're a football fan, this is Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning's had all kinds of issues with his neck. He's had surgeries and whatnot. But this is a clear-cut sign. Yeah, 3 surgeries, I think, on his neck. But you can see, very obvious, and the problem you can see in his posture, too, is that he has underlying problems because of subluxation in his spine. So it doesn't just affect your physical well-being, it affects your emotional well-being and the way your organs function, too. So we see this all the time with kids. I mean, so those of you who have kids, this is so common these days. We call this text neck, where they're on their phones or on their video games all the time, and you can see the head is constantly forward, puts so much stress on the spinal cord, and then kids wonder why they're having emotional issues. The level of depression in teenagers in high school these days is as high as it's ever been in history. There's, one of the most prevalent jobs now for high schools are counselors, because these kids have to see counselors all the time because there's so much depression and it was, it hasn't been like that years ago, but this is a big part of it. So, I think Dr. Vince mentioned this during the dinner, is that every inch of forward head posture, so your head goes forward, that's 10 more pounds your muscles and your body has to hold up. So our goal is to get the curve back in the neck, get the head back over the shoulders, remove a lot of that stress, get better nerve flow, and guess what? Then the body just starts to function better and starts to heal no matter what's going on. I don't care if you have, leg pain, sciatica, back pain, headaches, or if you're a cancer survivor. Your body will function better when you have a properly functioning spine and nervous system. Okay? So this is an interesting little study here. I just wanted to share the results of this with you. This is chiropractic wellness. So these are patients who come into the chiropractor regularly, not because they're in pain, but they've been coming in for a regular basis. So they found with this study is that they studied 311 patients ages 65 and older, right, who had received maintenance care for 5 years or longer, okay, versus healthy citizens who had not been to the chiropractor their same age. And they found an overwhelming response. So the chiropractic patients had spent only 31% of the national average for health care. So they spent a lot less money on sickness, right? On going to the doctor or medications or anything else that they had to spend. So less than a third. They had 50% less medical provider visits. So they were in the hospital a lot less. Their health habits were radically better than the overall populations. They had far less cigarette consumption. 98.5% of them, so almost all of them, believed that the care was considerably or extremely valuable. And the chiropractic wellness patients had 60% fewer hospital admissions, 59% days less hospitalized, 62% less outpatient surgeries, and 85% less pharmaceutical costs. So huge, definitely incredible study on elderly people. And it's interesting. So, I don't know if this was well before your time, but there was a government study in Ontario when Kim and I first started to practice. And this is back in maybe the mid-90s. It was called the Manga Report. And so the Ministry of Health in Ontario hired this Ottawa University professor to do a government health study on chiropractic. And it was really on chiropractic and lower back pain. But he did this, it was like a 2-year-long study, and came out with the results that for people to have full access to the chiropractor, he said that would minimize healthcare costs by something like 30% in Ontario. He said that would save the Ontario government 30% of its multi-billion dollars of healthcare expenses. He said this would be astronomical, but they took the study and they put it under the carpet because they didn't want to hear the results. So it's been a real contention in chiropractic. We're saying, like, listen, why would no hip cover chiropractic? So it's been shown right there that chiropractic care works very, very well for keeping people healthy, keeping people out of the doctor, keeping people at work, and keeping people functioning. But again, there's a lot of politics behind it. So
Yeah.
all right, so you see all these great athletes like Tom Brady. There's Usain Bolt, fastest man in the world, getting chiropractic care. And you see this one here. It says, by releasing stress in the nervous system. This is by Dr. Irwin Kaur, who's a medical researcher. There's an improvement in immune function. So overwhelming improvement in immune function with chiropractic care. Here's a neat little story too. And this is a fellow named Dave. So this is going back a few years ago. Dave was a friend of mine. And Dave came to me and said, Colin, he goes, and I met him actually at the gym. So Dave owned a health food store, and so we got to know each other quite well. And he said, I want to go on this physique competition. He goes, so I'm working on my workouts and whatnot. And he goes, I want to really improve my physique. I want to improve my posture because it's like a bodybuilding training, all natural bodybuilding competition. And so I said, great. He goes, I want you to help me with my nutrition. So Dave came into the office, and we did an assessment, and you can see, it's really interesting here. Here's Dave's pictures, but here he is doing a back double bicep pose. Look at his shoulders.
Yeah,
See how tilted they are?
Yeah.
Right? So I said right off the bat, I mean, that puts you at a disadvantage when judges look at you and you've got a posture, you know, you're doing, and your posture's way up on one side. I said, let's try to correct that. He said, okay. So he got under chiropractic care and we put him on a nutritional plan, which is exactly the nutritional plan that we're going to talk about in Nutrition 102. So he started that in December of 2009. Okay, so here he is, December 3rd, 2009 on the left. Here he is at the end of March. So roughly about 3 months later, 3.5 months later. And look at his physique. He had lost about maybe 45 to 50 pounds. And he just got absolutely ripped to go into this competition. He looked fantastic. You know, he got a full six-pack there. He's in great shape. He said he felt better after going through this. And he did the advanced plan. He felt better. But here's the really cool thing. And I love this slide right here. Look at this. So this is chiropractic, after he'd been under chiropractic care.
that.
Amazing. So we got great changes in his x-rays, great changes in his spine, his posture completely changed. So that's really, and so the whole thing is, you know, all of you that come into the office, our goal is to make some structural change in your spine so neurologically you can function better and start to heal. And your posture will actually change. We want to obviously see that on your x-rays. That's why we have, you know, post x-rays planned for you. But these are the type of changes that we're looking for, okay? So that's really, I think that's really cool stuff.